I recently watched the new Biggest Loser documentary on Netflix. And for anyone that doesn't remember the program, it basically exploited fat people for the entertainment of the masses, while the masses likely sat at home watching it, stuffing their faces with food. The saddest part about the whole thing is we got to go back and revisit some of the guys years later that have basically just gained all the weight back, apart from the odd few that have definitely found the modern day buffet blocker jabs. And this just goes to show that these harsh methods, they just don't really work for long-term behavioral change. And I believe if you want to create long-term adherence to any program, you need to foster some accurate empathy. And that's what we're going to talk about today with some simple tools that you can run on yourself so you can create a program that fits your worst day as well as your best. So yes, there are moments where the hype mode does work. It's kickoff, it's selection day, any sort of window where you need a high level of arousal for a very short period of time, and the task in which you're completing is very simple and straightforward. But it is a tool for a very specific time and a very specific place. If you overuse it, you're just going to burn yourself out and likely get hurt. Now, yeah, there are people that do thrive in these high intensity situations and can deal with it more often, but they are the outliers. They're your Goggins types. And it's great that there's people like that out there, but they are the absolute outliers. Most of us have kids, night shifts, injuries. These things combined are already raising our level of arousal to a place where we're pretty fried on most days. You only have so much more capacity that you can put on top. And like any form of motivation tactic, it's just fragile. You need something that's going to work on a day when you're being a bit of a pussy and you just don't fancy it. And to do that, you need to be a little bit more strategic and a little bit more precise. Fostering accurate empathy is the way to do that. And what I mean by accurate empathy is not mollycoddling yourself and saying everything's going to be okay. It's genuine tactics that you put in place that will allow you to be able to adhere to your program on 5 a.m. on Thursday morning. And for all the optimal bros out there, winnable will always be optimal. Now, taking a closer look at empathy. In the coaching world, this is something that is harped on from day one, that you must be empathetic. When I started out in day one, I often thought, well, how can I be empathetic with a professional athlete if I've never been one? How can Gillian Michaels and Bob, whatever his name is, from the Fattest Loser, be empathetic with guys that are 400 pounds when I don't think they've ever been 400 pounds? But the mistake here is this type of empathy is affective empathy, where I must feel how you feel. We often make this same mistake when we're choosing a coach and believe we must choose a coach that has been through the exact same scenario that we've been through. But this type of empathy can be actually pretty noisy and misleading. For instance, there are plenty of professional athletes that turn coaches that weren't particularly successful. And one of the reasons why this is projection bias. It becomes pretty easy to project your own constraints, motivations, even pain thresholds onto the person that you're coaching. And you also have that curse of knowledge where you've been through it. It's very easy to forget what it was like at the start. So on the smallest scale, you might start teaching things at step 3, 4, 5 instead of the original first exercises or drills that you used to learn these techniques or tactics from the start. And the number one that I've seen quite often is it's a survivorship bias. All athletes are the outliers, hence why they are doing it and the rest of us are watching them. It's really easy to forget that your genetics or potentially luck might have meant that you were just the one that made it, while everybody else got injured and missed opportunities or quite frankly had to retire. If you do have a coach or a teacher that has that lived experience, just stop and ask yourself a second. Have they ever actually asked questions about my scenario? And if the program they've given you has their name at the top of it, I would definitely start to think again. So coaches don't necessarily have to have the same autobiography as you. They just need to be able to understand your constraints with cognitive empathy, so understanding what it feels like for you, coupled with a bit of compassion. They genuinely care about you and they want to help. So having empathy means that you just have an accurate grasp of constraints, which allows you to then create an actionable plan. And if you are out there not fortunate enough to have a coach and you're writing your own plans, you can still foster empathy for yourself. So you create adherence to the programs that you are writing. One of the models to first understand when we do this is the hot and cold gap. And the hot and cold gap basically states that when we're in a cold state, i.e., we're calm, comfortable, not craving, not in pain, we systematically misjudge how we or others will think and act in a hot state when we're tired, hungry, stressed, ashamed, or in pain. So let's say you're writing out your programs on a Sunday when you're comfy and caffeinated. It's very easy to underestimate the friction that you're going to encounter when you're knackered come 5 a.m. on Thursday morning. And most people would have tried the simple ways to get around this, such as laying your clothes out the night before, meal prepping in advance, etc. But one of the best ways to do this is creating two different options in your planning. So you have a best day and a worst day scenario, giving you autonomy and choice. And this moves us into model 2, which is the self-determination theory. This idea says that humans have three basic psychological needs: autonomy, or a sense of choice; competence, where it feels doable or winnable; and relatedness, where you feel like you belong there. And if we use this theory well, we can actually shift our motivations from external to internal. So we don't need guys like Jill and Bob to get in our faces and start screaming again. And the way you can approach this practically is by giving yourself three knobs that you can dial in. Knob 1 is choice. So give yourself two viable options that both hit the same goal. Option 1 being that best case scenario day when you're really up for it. Option 2 being a minimum viable program, be it intensity or volume, just the minimum amount you need to get done that keeps moving that needle towards your goal. Dial 2 is just wins. So make sure you've got something in there where you can make it winnable early, be it the first 1 or 2 reps that you know if you complete, you're going to feel good about it, and it's just going to keep you moving forwards for the rest of the session. And number 3 is that belonging, just basically finding the right environment. If you can't stand what you're looking at or the people around you, you're just making life harder for yourself. And as you're going through this 3-knob SDT planning process, one technique you can use that is often used on you without you knowing it is motivational interviewing. So if you've ever been sold anything or you've had a coach, you've likely encountered this even if you weren't aware of it. And motivational interviewing basically is a way for me to create a relationship with you and evoke change talk that I can pull out and then use that language back at you and use as motivation to keep you moving when you really don't fancy it. And you can use this technique on yourself with the ask, provide, ask framework. Practically, that might look something like this, where you ask yourself, well, what exactly makes me bow every Thursday morning? And then provide a tiny option that will still move the needle, that minimum viable program we were speaking about. And then ask yourself legitimately, on my worst day, would I actually do this? If not, you need to shrink it again. And look, you do need to have some level of discipline with this. That minimum viable program does need to move the needle forwards. You don't have to love the gym, you don't have to love the plan, but you'll be surprised when the plan actually fits your life, how adherence climbs and the results come with it. And if some of that seems a little bit too much for you, here's the parts that are the most important to take away. Have 2 routes with the same goal. Give yourself an entry rep because it's a lot better than doing nothing. And if you really, really don't fancy it, just change the environment. Don't change the goal. Now, if you do need that hype mode switched on because you have a peak in your program coming up, then just remember that there's a budget in this. You don't want to use it all the time because you are going to burn yourself out. If the task involves any sort of skill or real cognitive element to it, you need to actually think about how you're going to complete the task. It's definitely not the right time. But if you need 90% effort and above, you're well trained in the task and you know exactly what you need to do, then use it. But just be sure that afterwards, you want to create that shift in your nervous system to actually recover, bring yourself back down again. Whatever that might be for you, breathing, walking, watching Biggest Loser documentaries on Netflix. But hype is a scalpel. It is not something you want to use all the time. Use it very purposefully and then switch it off after. One thing that I've found can be very useful is to keep a scoreboard. So keep a track of how many sessions where you only manage the minimum viable program, and then track how many times you had to change your program on the fly. If at the end of the program that this is pretty high tally, then it's highly likely that you do need to change something in the way that you are programming. I'll put a step-by-step of all those points we spoke about in the description of the video if you do want to run this on yourself. Just remember for now that empathy isn't about being soft on yourself, it's just about being precise. And a precise plan is one that you'll probably stick to. Don't coach yourself like Julian and Bob would. I'll see you in the next one.